You can spend years becoming an expert in your field and lose thousands of dollars on a 5-minute sales call with the wrong conversation about the price, the timeline, or the scope of the project. If you're new here, my name is Faris. In the 20 years since my devastating layoff from a VP position at a Silicon Valley startup, I've built and co-founded 7 businesses, generated over $70 million in sales, and scaled my marketing consulting firm, Enor, to 8 figures before selling it to a global media giant. I now help entrepreneurs like you start and grow their own consulting and service businesses. I have seen consultants fumble a sale or start giving in to unreasonable demands the moment a prospect asks,
"Can you lower the price? Can you finish sooner?
or
Can you add one more thing?"
they start negotiating from weakness because they're afraid of losing the client. Having a strong stance to negotiate from determines your success and failure more than anything else. In this Ultimate Guide video, I'll show you how to negotiate from a position of strength. I'll go over why most consultants lose negotiations before the proposal is ever written, the negotiation preparation mindset, the 7 tried and tested practices I use to protect my margins while creating better outcomes for both sides, negotiation gimmicks that undermine trust and long-term business, and the final principle, the golden rule that has guided every successful negotiation I've had, all with tools and templates that you can put to use right away. Throughout this video, my friend Haggling Hank will help. Now, Hank isn't based on one client. He's a mashup of the real objections, the real questions, and the real negotiation practices that I've encountered in working on and overseeing over 2,000 proposals and 600 projects in the last 2 decades. You'll see Hank in action in a bit, but let's first talk about something that is critical for every aspect of entrepreneurship: preparation and mindset. You can't wait until after you deliver the proposal to think about negotiation. The earlier you think about negotiation, the easier and cleaner the formal negotiation stage will be. Part 1, negotiation preparation and mindset. You might think of a typical sales process this way. You connect with a lead, you understand their needs, you show them how you can help, you present a proposal, and then enter the formal negotiation before you close the deal. But in reality, negotiation can happen at almost any point in the sales process, so it's important to be prepared. Scope, timeline, and risk. First, be prepared for what clients might negotiate about. Yes, as I've mentioned, money does come up, sometimes quite early, but money isn't the only issue. Clients often negotiate these 3 other aspects of the project. Scope, they ask for more hours, more reports, more revisions, or more training. Timeline, they want the work completed sooner. And risk, they ask for a smaller initial engagement, a pilot before a larger rollout, more favorable cancellation terms, or stronger guarantees. The first step in negotiating these points is to be ready when they come up. 2, connect with decision makers. Before negotiating anything, make sure you're negotiating with someone who can actually make the decision. You may spend an hour discussing pricing, payment terms, and timelines with someone who has no authority to approve the engagement. Early in the sales process, ask questions like, who else will be involved in approving this project? Besides yourself, who needs to be comfortable with this proposal? I just want to make sure we address any questions they might have. Knowing who's actually making the decision may save you from negotiating the same deal multiple times. 3, set some boundaries. This is really critical. It took me years to figure this one out. Before any sales discussions, set some boundaries in your own mind. Define 4 things: your target fee, your minimum acceptable terms. For example, you can't do this project in less than a set number of days or below a certain price point. What you're willing to trade, maybe more time for a larger scope of work, and the point at which you'll walk away. Without those boundaries, Every client request feels like a difficult decision you have to make under pressure. With them, you're no longer reacting, you're making thoughtful business decisions. 4, negotiation is not war. Most new consultants have spent years becoming exceptional engineers, analysts, operators, or industry experts, not salespeople. Then they start a business and suddenly they have to sell those skills and negotiate what they're worth. Negotiation feels uncomfortable because many consultants mistake it for conflict. They picture a client trying to outsmart them and at the same time worry that any pushback could cost them the opportunity.
Give me your best deal now.
That fear becomes even stronger when you don't have many leads in your sales pipeline and you need the revenue. Instead of responding thoughtfully to the client's request, you begin negotiating against yourself. Here's an example. Sam, a consultant I coached, experienced this when he launched his operations consulting business. He had spent 6 years running operations for a home care agency before deciding to consult for similar organizations. He knew the work, understood the problems, and had already convinced his first prospect that he could help. Then he had to name his price. Sam felt that he needed to stand his ground, but he was still afraid the fee would drive the client away. We'll discuss specific ways that you can approach negotiation as a constructive win-win exercise rather than an exercise in willfulness or fear. In this way, I consider good negotiation like the martial art that I practice, called Aikido. In Aikido, you don't meet force with force. Instead of resisting your opponent's energy, you blend with it, experience where it's going, and redirect it. 5, active listening and empathy. This constructive, dynamic negotiation starts most importantly with active listening and empathy on your part as the consultant and salesperson. Chris Voss, the famous FBI negotiator, in his book Never Split the Difference, talks about tactical empathy, meaning listening so well that the other person feels genuinely understood. I like this concept a lot. I would just say that the best consultants show real, not just tactical empathy for leads and clients. When people feel heard, they become less defensive, think more clearly, and are more willing to solve problems collaboratively. They want confidence that you, the consultant, understand their business, their risks, and what success looks like for them. People don't just want to be agreed with, they want to feel understood. Now that we've looked at preparation and negotiation mindset, let's look at the 7 practices that help you negotiate with confidence and understand what clients are really trying to negotiate. And feel free to pause the video and download and fill in my negotiation preparation checklist. It's a 1-page worksheet to prepare for any client negotiation, including target price, walkaway points, tradable items, payment terms, scope boundaries, and discovery questions. Now, before we get into the 7 negotiation practices, here's a pro tip. I want to recommend that for your very first sales, yes, you need to negotiate so you don't sell yourself short, but it is most important to close deals, get delivery experience, get some revenue coming in, and get the testimonials, case studies, and referrals that will grow your business, so be flexible early on. As you get more established, you can be more selective and negotiate a little harder. With that, let's start looking at 7 specific negotiation practices. Practice number 1, build trust before you negotiate. I like to call this preemptive positioning. By the time a client asks for a discount, they've already formed an opinion about you. When I started my very first business, clients were asking for discounts all the time, and I gave those discounts more often than I wanted. But over time, I became much more intentional about positioning our company as a premium marketing consulting firm. I'd hear something like this, and remember my friend Haggling Hank. He'll be assisting in these conversations.
Ferris, I really like your proposal, but another firm came in at about 25% lower. Why shouldn't I just go with them?
Or
Everything looks good, but procurement is asking why we should pay more when another firm submitted a lower proposal.
that's a fair question. But let me tell you, we're not the cheapest option. We compete on quality of work and also on our responsiveness. And when projects become difficult, we stay engaged and take care of our clients. That's exactly what I used to tell clients, and I believed it from the bottom of my heart. And that statement wasn't about justifying a higher fee. It reframed the conversation around accountability, service, and reducing the client's risk in choosing you as their consultant. Trust isn't something you claim, it is something the client concludes from the way you lead the sales process. And if you're finding this content helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others. I would really appreciate it. Practice number 2, set expectations early. This is also part of what I call preemptive positioning. And it is about setting expectations before they become negotiation points. One of the biggest mistakes new consultants make is assuming the client understands how consulting engagements work. They often don't. It is your responsibility to establish clear expectations early before anyone is discussing pricing, scope, or timelines. During discovery, don't just gather information, help the client understand how you'll work together. This is the time to clarify things like how decisions will be made, what success looks like, how revisions and change requests are handled, what responsibilities belong to the client, and what could affect the timeline. So you can ask questions like this. How does your organization typically approve consulting projects? How many stakeholders or how many departments are involved? How will you and your team evaluate whether this project is successful? These questions aren't just helping you understand the client, they're also establishing a shared understanding of how the engagement will be managed. For example, you proactively say, projects of this size with this many stakeholders involved include 3 rounds of revisions. Anything beyond that is handled through a change request. And to meet your requested deadline, we'll need approval within 2 business days.
That makes sense. If we end up needing additional reports or another round of revisions, we'll just handle it internally or ask for change requests.
Notice what happened. Neither of us was negotiating. We were simply confirming the rules of engagement before the project began. Early in my career, when I was still learning sales, I made concessions too often, too quickly, because I was focused on winning the account before the client fully understood our process and the value we brought. Eventually, we changed our sales process. We spent more time clarifying expectations and reducing uncertainty before discussing terms. The result was fewer pricing objections, fewer last-minute surprises, and stronger client relationships. By the time formal negotiations began, many of the issues that typically became negotiation points had already been addressed. Practice number 3, use a budgetary quote. Let's say you're consulting on some report automation and analysis project.
So Ferris, how much does your service cost?
Well, based on what I've learned so far, projects like this usually fall between $5,000 and $10,000. The final investment will depend on the number of departments requesting dashboards, the reporting requirements, and the level of ongoing support. See, early in the sales process, or if you need more time to dig deeper into the client's requirements, you may not have enough information to provide a fixed price quote, or if you're selling hourly, to provide a set of hours to complete the work. Instead, give a budgetary quote. Now, keep the range realistic. It should be narrow enough to be useful, but wide enough to account for the remaining unknowns. Avoid a range like $2,500 to $25,000. That tells the client you still don't have enough information to estimate the work. Behavioral research has consistently shown that the first credible number introduced into a negotiation influences the rest of the discussion. That's why your initial range should be thoughtful and believable. Now pay close attention to the client's reaction.
All right, buddy. We've typically spent between $4,000 and $5,000 on projects like this.
I appreciate you sharing that early. Let's first make sure we fully understand the scope, and then we can see whether there is a version of the project that fits within the budget.
Great. That seems reasonable.
The goal of a budgetary quote isn't to lock yourself into a price, it is to start a conversation. Next, practice number 4, define the scope precisely. Let me share an expensive lesson I learned early in my analytics consulting career. We scoped what we thought would be a straightforward project to measure user activity on a website. The website looked simple with just a couple of forms to track. What we didn't realize and failed to clarify in the proposal was that the client expected us to implement analytics for their entire e-commerce section of the website that they were launching soon. We assumed e-commerce wasn't included. They assumed it was part of their website. Neither side was trying to be difficult. The scope simply wasn't defined clearly enough. We ended up spending nearly 3 times the hours we had budgeted for the project, turning what should have been a profitable engagement into a significant loss. That painful experience taught me that one of the best negotiations is the one you never have to have, because the expectations were clear from the beginning. A well-written proposal is one of your strongest negotiating tools. It should clearly define what you will deliver, when you will deliver it, what the client is responsible for, and just as importantly, what falls outside the engagement. I know this might be very difficult for new consultants, but the more projects you complete, the easier this becomes, because you begin to recognize where misunderstandings usually occur. For example, let's say you train on AI workflows and you tailor your training to mid-level managers. The proposal should clearly define number of length of sessions, say 4 2-hour sessions, number of trainees, documentation deliverables and revision limits, client responsibilities, venue logistics, etc., timeline, assumptions, acceptance criteria, exclusions, and change request process. When those expectations are documented upfront, conversations about additional work become much easier. Let's see what Hank has on his mind.
Ferris, while you're doing the workshops for the mid-level managers, could you also train our team leads? And we'd probably want a short executive presentation. That shouldn't change the investment since it's the same concept and material, right?
Yeah, right. No, don't say that. Instead, you can confidently say, I'm so glad to hear that there's more interest in my training, and I'd be happy to extend it to the team leads and the executive team. Since that requires additional planning, customization, and delivery time, I'll include those as change requests and update the proposal with an add-on option. See, that conversation stays professional because you're discussing the scope, not defending your price. Now, a clearly defined scope also gives you flexibility when a client's budget is lower than expected. If Hank says,
we've just spent a lot in this area and the only remaining budget for training I have is $5,000.
Instead of reducing your $7,500 fee, you could say, we can meet that budget by reducing the number of sessions from 4 to 3. The client stays within budget. You protect your margin by reducing your work instead of reducing your value. When scope is clearly defined, you're no longer negotiating your value, you're simply deciding how much work belongs in the engagement. Practice number 5, negotiate payment terms. Sometimes the issue is not price. Clients want or need to have flexibility in how they pay you. Price and payment timing are 2 separate negotiations. A client may fully accept your fee, it's very reasonable, and still have cash flow constraints or budget cycles or internal purchasing policies that make a single payment difficult. Instead of reducing the investment, consider changing the payment structure. Say you're using a project-based or a fixed-fee pricing approach, say $10,000 for the entire project. You might divide the work and payment terms into milestones, 50% upon signing, 40% upon delivery of the draft, and then 10% upon final acceptance. If a client pushes back on an upfront payment, don't immediately change the terms. Ask why. It may be company policy. It may be a temporary cash flow issue, especially for small businesses, or it may reflect uncertainty about your ability to deliver. Understanding the reason helps you propose the right solution. Let me walk you through a couple of examples with my friend Hank.
Ferris, everything looks good, but I just can't do 50% upfront. Can we start with 20% instead?
Can you help me understand what is driving that?
I'll be honest, cash flow is tight right now.
I understand. And the reason we ask for 50% upfront is that we invest a significant amount of time and resources before you see the first deliverable. It helps cover those upfront costs and reserves our team's capacity. If that is the only obstacle, let's see if we can find a structure that works for you and us. Perhaps we meet somewhere in the middle. Here's another example you're likely to run into with larger organizations.
Ferris, we don't have an issue with the investment. Our procurement policy simply doesn't allow 50% upfront.
Understood. If that is a company policy, let's work within it. Instead of treating this as one large project, how about we structure it into 3 phases? Each phase would begin with a payment and conclude with a deliverable before moving to the next.
That should work. I'll check with procurement, but we've done phased engagements before.
Large organizations often have procurement policies that aren't negotiable. So rather than fighting the policy, restructure the engagement so that you maintain healthy cash flow while working within their purchasing process. In these examples, both sides resolve something of value in a timely way. Adjusting the payment terms solves the client's real problem. And here's a pro tip before moving to the next principle. When you're using a project-based or a fixed-fee pricing approach, keep a meaningful upfront payment. It reserves your team's capacity, provides working capital, and demonstrates the client's commitment to the project. And whatever you do, avoid completing the entire engagement before receiving some payment. Don't finance the client's project with your own cash. I have a full guide on pricing models for consultants. Check out the link in the description. Practice number 6, use honest scarcity. One advantage you have as a consulting business is that your capacity is limited. You and your team have only so many hours in the week and so many projects that you can successfully deliver at one time. There's nothing wrong with communicating that honestly. So when you're speaking with a client, you might say something like this: we currently have capacity to begin work in 1 week. I'm also discussing the same start date with 2 other prospective clients. Now, Hank is not liking this answer. He says,
Come on, man. Are you saying that just to get me to make a decision faster?
not at all. I'm simply sharing where we are. We only take on as many projects as we know we can deliver well. If that start date gets booked, I'd rather tell you now so that we don't overcommit and disappoint you later. You're not creating pressure, you're sharing the reality of your business. Most importantly, never manufacture scarcity. Don't invent competing prospects. Don't create fake deadlines, and don't pretend your calendar is full when it isn't. Honest scarcity isn't about creating urgency, it's about protecting your limited capacity while helping the client make an informed decision. Practice number 7, don't trade on promises. We learned one of these lessons while negotiating with a major personal care global brand. We wanted the account badly because the logo would add tremendous credibility to our company if we could add it to our website and marketing materials. During the final stages of negotiation, one senior VP asked us for a meaningful discount. he offered a powerful incentive.
Ferris, we'd really like to move forward. If you can sharpen your pencil on the pricing, I'll personally introduce you to our sister brands. There are about 15 companies in our group, so this could lead to a lot more business.
Now that was a very compelling offer, and we believed it would more than make up for the discount, so we agreed. The engagement went well. They were happy with our work and signed up for a monthly retainer with the discounted pricing. But the promised introductions to the sister brands never happened. 1 year later, we were still waiting. The problem wasn't that they acted in bad faith. The problem was that we traded something concrete for something that was never clearly defined or measured. We could have structured the concession differently. We could have said, we're more than happy to provide this preferred rate for the initial project. If the introductions do not result in qualified meetings within 6 months, future work will return to our standard rate. Another option would have tied the discount to a larger commitment. We're more than happy to offer that rate. The agreement would have to include 2 projects, or we can apply the discount after an introduction results in a signed engagement. In this and similar situations, referrals have value when they happen. A general promise of future introductions has little value on today's income statement. You should never rely on a vague future opportunity to justify a permanent concession today. Part 3, negotiation gimmicks to avoid. Some negotiation tactics might help you win a deal today, but they'll make it harder to build a lasting client relationship or future referrals. Consulting is different from transactional sales. Clients aren't just buying a deliverable, they're buying your judgment, your professionalism, and your ability to solve important business problems. That's why I recommend avoiding manipulative sales tactics, fake deadlines, this offer expires today, pressure to sign immediately, let's get this signed on this call, making promises you can't guarantee, some specific return on investment, hiding fees or introducing surprises later, using exaggerated fear. Your competitors are already doing this, and if you don't go with us, your business will go under. I've heard things like that. And don't make up reasons like, I need to check with my manager, if you're the owner. If you genuinely need time to think about it or discuss the proposal with a business partner or your delivery manager, say exactly that. Now for the golden rule. Now, part 4, the final principle. Every concession should receive a concession. If you only remember one thing from this video, it is avoiding the mistake that consultants make all the time. When a client asks for a concession, every concession should receive a concession. First, slow down the conversation. Second, acknowledge the client's concern. And then, if you decide to offer a concession on price, make sure you are getting something back. Let's see what Haggling Hank has up his sleeve.
I really like everything we've discussed, but I'm struggling with the $20,000 investment. Is there any flexibility in your fee?
It sounds like the investment is giving you some pause. Then slow down, then ask, can you help me understand what is driving that concern?
It's not that I think you're overpriced. I can only get $15,000 approved this quarter.
That is helpful to know. How about we trim down the scope and deliver the project over a 6-week period instead of 4? That will give me more flexibility with resource allocation for other deliverables. Notice that I never reduced my value. We simply reshaped the agreement to fit the client's constraints while protecting the economics of the project. This way, you leave the client feeling heard and understood, and also met them where they were while you protected your margins. So that was one way to respond when the real issue is budget. Here's another situation where the client is asking for a compressed timeline.
Look, if you can deliver the project in 6 weeks instead of 8, I think we're ready to move forward.
I'm happy to explore that. When we adjust one part of the agreement, we usually adjust another so the project remains successful for both of us. Or you can try a different approach. You can say, delivering in 6 weeks would require us to reallocate resources and reprioritize other client work. We can certainly do it. It would involve a rush fee. So if clients want a faster timeline, ask for quicker approvals or charge a rush fee. If they want more scope, increase the fee or extend the timeline. If they request longer payment terms, ask for larger upfront payment. Other things you can ask for include a larger financial commitment, a phase 2 or a retainer, permission to use their logo, a case study, or a reference call. Clients generally respect that because it's reasonable. Every successful negotiation should leave both sides feeling they received something of value. Before you automatically discount your fee, ask yourself, what does this client value that would cost me relatively little to provide? It could be an additional training session, more comprehensive documentation, access to existing office hours, a quarterly executive presentation, an additional project review, templates you've already developed, limited post-project email support. To help you think through these trade-offs for your next deal, I've included my consulting negotiation value matrix in the description. It helps you evaluate each concession based on value to client, cost to your business, time required, and delivery risk. Now, negotiation only happens if you've earned the opportunity to negotiate. If you're struggling to move deals forward and struggling to win proposals, watch my ultimate guide to winning consulting proposals. I'll show you the complete consulting sales process from first conversation to signed contract so you can consistently win more business.